compare the two models, the pros and cons, so the linear model had a large commitment of resources, whereas the wheel and spoke provides much more flexibility. You can focus on your strength, and it frees up your resources. Your focus is diffuse, it's everywhere, right? You're trying to do all things well, be all things to all people. Here, you will focus only on your strength and then partner with other people who do other things well. The long PD cycle, and I think this is maybe the most interesting thing, the PD cycle will be shorter, because if your business model is actually looking at maybe phase 1 to proof of concept, you're looking at products that you can pick up here and then let go there. So for your company, your business cycle, your product development cycle shrinks down to maybe 1-2 years. And similarly in discovery. And then you partner with everyone else in this wheel and spoke model. Okay? So I think this will be one of the keys here. What's different also is the attitude. This is one of control. Okay, no, we know how to do it. We do it better. Whichever company, ABC. But here it's partnership and alliances. Okay, so it's now here. It's a partnership of equals. This is a competitive model. You're secretive. You want to do it yourself. You want to get there first. But this will be more collaborative. Okay, so this is where you create multiple wins. So this is what I think will be the future. Just to give you an example, okay, now I've been with Quintiles 7 months, and I didn't know so much about Quintiles before I joined Quintiles. I thought of Quintiles as a CRO. So if you want to do a clinical study, you go to Quintiles or one of the other companies, and they will do it for you. But in fact, there's a big change in the service industry, and this is not just Quintiles. This is also some of our other companies like Quintiles, our competitors, who also have different segments. So, for example, Quintiles, there are the 4 C's. So there's the clinical, which is a traditional CRO service. There's also commercial, which is co-marketing, contract sales force. There's a consulting arm that provides, market access, regulatory strategy, and then there's also a capital arm, which was actually very interesting to me, because in the past 8 years, Quintiles has invested $2.8 billion in about 80 different alliances in creating these partnerships and making partnerships work. So clearly, you can see in what was once a traditional CRO, many innovative things are happening. And again, the other thing to point out is that when you are a company that does clinical trials across the landscape, many regions, for all kinds of big pharmaceutical companies, you acquire a lot of experience on how to do clinical trials, okay? Much more than one company can. In fact, if we look at the number of patients enrolled over the past 8 or 9 years, the total is about 3.2 million from about 4,000 different studies. So there's a lot of clinical trial experience. There's a lot of medical expertise too. There are over 300 physicians in Quintiles worldwide, and about 400 PhDs. So again, a lot of expertise in service companies that I think often within pharma is overlooked. This is just one example. I just want to very quickly give you what some of these partnerships that Quintiles is involved with looks like. So this is one with Eisai. So this is public information. So in 2009, Eisai came to Quintiles and said, look, we have an oncology portfolio. We don't want to build all the capacity to develop it ourselves. Can we work with you? So in fact, Eisai and Quintiles got together. It was a 50-50 partnership in terms of co-investment. They created almost like a joint venture, so a project team that sits outside. They went through a portfolio review process, picked 6 compounds that they thought had the best chance of success, developed 11 indications, and are implementing the studies. And the investment model here is, of course, the assets belong to Eisai. They have the IP on that, and they bring in the cash. And Quintiles is providing the expertise and a lot of the service, which is in kind. So a lot of that is in-kind service with milestones and shared risk. So again, a very, very innovative partnership models. When I talk about the wheel and spoke, I think this is an example of things to come in the future. So, okay, so just wrapping up very quickly. So, and just about a word about my interest. So clinical development landscape in Asia, so clinical trial in Asia have been booming. But again, this has been an offshoring activity, enrollment of patients in Asia. The clinical strategy, the study design, at a program level, the knowledge-based activities have, up to this point, largely remained in the West. So it's been in the U.S. and in Western Europe that the actual strategies were developed. The protocol implementation, patient recruitment occurred in Asia. So this actually has created a bit of a gap, and this I think is currently a great need. This clinical development expertise in Asia. It's still in its build up phase. The other thing in the landscape is that to remember is that the Asian biopharmaceutical companies have a hard time becoming global players, and I think to a large extent are still non-global players because they lack strategic drug development expertise. If we were to look back 10, 20 years at Japan, we see that the Japanese companies were very successful in terms of coming up with a discovery, product development, market success, but all in Japan. They really struggled with going outside Japan, and now more recently are setting up R&D headquarters in the US and in other places. I think this is something that other Asian companies and other Asian countries should think about and be aware of. Being successful in your own country is only part of the issue. So you need to be able to figure out how do you come up with a regulatory strategy, development plan for countries outside. So for Korean countries to think about China, Japan, other Asia, Europe, the US, and the same thing for China. And it's not so easy to get this. When people think of clinical development, clinical trials, they think it's a formula. Okay, we'll do some phase 1, then we'll do phase 2, then we'll do some phase 3, and then we're done. They think that somehow the science goes into the discovery part. That's not true. Clinical development is unique for every drug that you produce. It's really individualized. You okay? All right. So I think the landscape in terms of strategic drug development, this talent is still really quite short in Asia, and I think this is a need. So what I'm trying to do with Quintiles is the vision is to create a world-class first in Asia virtual drug development unit in Singapore, which will provide this strategic drug development expertise to the companies in the biopharmaceutical field. And where is the demand for this? The client segments for the strategic drug development service will be the emerging biotech companies in Asia seeking strategic guidance to develop their pipeline. They have good discovery platforms, but again, clinical development is a different skill, and it's also much more expensive than discovery. About 90% of the cost of developing a drug is usually in phase 2, phase 3, not in discovery. So this is usually way out of reach of the finances of the biotech companies. The other segment would be the global multinational companies that are lacking expertise and infrastructure in Asia. So these would be more the mid-sized and small companies that before were quite happy to stay in the US and in Europe, but now see more and more that in fact the future is in Asia, and the future success depends on becoming players in Asia. So for them, they need to bring their existing pipeline and also the current products that are on the market, they need to bring it into Asia. And they either have to come here and start hiring people, building infrastructure, or else they can partner with somebody. So that's another second segment. And the third, again, I think I mentioned that already, are the Asian pharmaceutical companies seeking to develop compounds for the global market, but lacking in-house expertise and international reach outside their domestic markets. Okay, so this would be the model, okay, where previously the traditional state, you had the client who came up with the whole vision, the thinking, the strategy, the protocol, and they gave it to the CRO, and if the price was right, the CRO got to do it, okay? But here we're looking at a partnered state where the client has a product, maybe a vision, and then you sit together with the client, come up with a strategy that works, so think together, and then implement it to be successful. Okay, so that was my presentation. I hope, yes, absolutely, thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so questions, I guess I'm allowed.
Amar, great presentation. Actually, I have two questions. The first is, coming back to the model of drug development. I think most of the people in the room would believe that in order to get a drug into the market, you need to have the best brains operating on that drug. Now, from an Asian perspective, the brains are all over Asia. Okay, how do we develop a model which ensures that these brains talk to each other? Okay, at the same time respecting intellectual property, because we want to get something new, it's innovative, And I think that's the greatest challenge we have, because if we actually have the greatest minds working on drug discovery and development, I think the model would be much more robust than it is today. That's the first question. The second question is, from a regulatory perspective, Europe has a good regulatory framework in EMA, and we have the US FDA. I think what Asia lacks today is independent national authority to approve drugs. If we then, is it possible, hypothetical question, is it possible to have a common regulatory framework within Asia to be able to approve drugs going forward? And is there a model that is going to be workable so that we'll be able to get in drugs at the same time, if not even earlier in Asia, as in the West, as compared to the West?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for those questions. So I think in answer to the first question, we have a lot of brains in Asia. Is there some way to network and connect it? I think there is. But right now we are still stuck in a competitive model, right? So we don't want to talk about these things. So we need to switch to a collaborative state. How do we switch into a collaborative state? I think the fundamental reason we're in a competitive state is because we are driven by the business model, right? So, healthcare, I guess I'm stating fact, is business. I mean, this morning we had a fantastic plenary session, but there was not that much medical or about medical need, although we did get some of that, in all fairness, but it was more from a financial Wall Street MBA kind of perspective, not from an MD perspective. So I think if we begin to start looking at patient needs, what are we trying to do here? Okay, I think this is an I don't think this is idealistic. I think this is a real opportunity for us in Asia. And actually, I'll just it's okay. Can you just put that? I had one backup slide. Can you put that? Or can I? Yeah, this one. Okay, this I just want to show you, and I don't mean to pick on any one drug or any one company, but this is the cost of Herceptin, okay, per year, okay, for 1 year treatment, and it's approximately $36,000. And this could be any biologic. It could be Nexavar that I was involved with developing for Bayer. Okay, $36,000 a year. So if you look at actually the per capita GDP, in the U.S. it's about 46,000. Okay, so barely in the U.S. you can afford it. In Japan it's a little bit about 39,000. But almost all the other countries, and when you come to the Asian countries, I mean, who can pay for that, right? So, I think obviously we need patent protection. There needs to be some incentive for innovation. But if innovation is driven by business model, I think we're going to be stuck a little bit in the old world. So I think we must begin to think more broadly and more openly, particularly in Asia, where there is great medical need. And I think to some extent we will see this happening anyway, because we see biosimilars, and Asia is the most active place for biosimilars. Okay, and for example, in China, I was there last week. The biosimilar for Enbrel, it costs about 1/4 or 1/30, or 1/3 of the original one. So I think this is what will happen. With respect to your second question, the regulatory, I think it's important that there be some degree of harmonization, but I think it's more important that the Asian countries not follow what the FDA or what the EMEA is doing, but figure out what are the needs in Asia, what is the play here, what is the future. So rather than rushing to make up some regulatory, I think it's better to figure it out. And I get a sense that the SFDA, and other health agencies do that, and the HSA, I think, as well, in terms of trying to figure out and find its own way rather than blindly follow.